On today's pod, I want to talk a little bit about Giannis and the bad start for the Bucks. There's a bad start for the Sixers, but it's because Embiid hasn't even played yet, and hypothetical NBA type things that may not even be accurate right now, but we're doing it anyway. We've got Big Cat from Barstool. Ever heard of him? We're talking college football playoff rankings. The rankings came out last night. We ran through all of the teams, different scenarios, and then he started questioning me quite a bit at the end. I don't know if that's going to help the pod a ton, and we've got life advice. I want to talk about Giannis and Embiid to start today's podcast. There's a couple different things, depending on where the timeline. So I'll just kind of jump into it. So if we look at the start of the season for the Milwaukee Bucks, not great, Bob. They're 1-6. We can keep talking about Chris Middleton coming back. But, I mean, even with him back, I don't know. Everything's fixed. I can't imagine that they're going to be this bad. I think I'll always hold out hope for them to be competitive or, hey, that's a tough out in the playoffs just because of Giannis. To me, he's top 3 player in the league. He's still fantastic. But when you look back at their timeline, you go through the franchise index. Okay, when's the last time you were scared of them? Well, 2 years ago, they won 58 games, but we all know they lost the Heat in the 1-8 matchup. Giannis missed half of that series with that back injury, but that was alarming. And when a team dies, it's different than when a person dies, because when a person dies, there's the date that we know that it happened. And when it happens to a team, we usually don't know the date until after it's happened, where you'll look back and go, oh, that's when it all went downhill. And I think at this point, there's an argument to make 2+ years later, like that might have been it. But because of Giannis, I don't like doing that. We can look at the rest of the future stuff and say, okay, well, Dame probably hasn't been the ceiling raiser that you would have hoped, but they weren't healthy last year going into the playoffs. So, here we go again. Their draft capital has been talked about a lot. They don't control any of their first round picks until 2031. And it's important to remember that control and then not having any are two entirely different things. Where if a swap doesn't happen, or if a swap does happen and then they have the other team's pick, it means on draft night they could trade that pick. So it's not like there's no possibility of pulling anything off. They burned 5 second rounders on Jay Crowder, which should be a lesson. And I've seen a lot of looking at their picks in the late first, early seconds, these rotation hopefuls that haven't worked out, where I think that part becomes a little unfair to franchise just because of how hard it is. It'd be nice to hit on one and feel like it's a real rotation contributor, but is it realistic that you're going to draft anybody in that spot? Sure, Tyrese Maxey worked out, but it was just a brilliant pick. It worked out. It's beyond expectations. But for the most part, I just think you start to pile on some of these franchises where it feels like they're losing all kinds of momentum. So when Giannis was talking with Sam Amick, who had relayed this joke where he basically was asking Giannis, what do you think will happen? And Giannis kind of jokingly grabbed a staffer and said, hey, if we don't win, do you think you'll get fired? And then he alluded to, and I'm paraphrasing the entire quote here because the point of the quote, it felt like it was a joke that got turned into something else, where it was a hint when Giannis was like, who knows, maybe I would get traded. And then you're thinking, all right, is this anything? Does this actually mean anything? And then they get off to this awful start. All right, so let's hold that thought for a second. Embiid has had a different week. He had some media availability where he said, quote, I've done too much for this fucking city. And when that made the rounds, I'll admit the first time I saw it, I went, uh-oh, that's pretty heavy. Then when you went and looked at all of the available audio and why he was so upset, it was directly related to the fact that the columnist that made one of the toughest transitions and one of the worst points you'll make, you want to get on Embiid for not playing enough, fine. You want to point out that if he wants to have some kind of legacy in the city, okay, fine, but you can't do that without playing and honoring your brother who died in a car accident. Again, I cannot believe somebody wrote that, was like, yep, that's the point I want to make. So Embiid was really more upset about that specific thing. That motivated that quote, where when that quote lived by itself without more depth, I thought, is this some kind of hint about how Embiid feels about his relationship with the organization and the city and all these different things. And then, of course, he gets to the altercation this weekend. He's been suspended 3 games. Yes, I've seen the joke about the real suspension should make him play 3 games. I've seen the joke, folks. So Embiid signed a 3-year extension in September with Philadelphia. So what does that mean? Well, the extension was 3 years, $193 million. That takes him through 28-29. He declined a player's option in 26-27. So that's the 2 years, get rid of the option, add the 3 new ones. So that means in 28-29 at 35 years old, Joel Embiid would be making $69 million a year. That $69 million a year number sounds staggering right now when the cap goes up, as it does. I mean, if you really wanted to be nasty, you could go, well, 4th highest in career earnings, and you've done, like, are you talking about second round appearances? But that's not, I don't know that that's entirely, I mean, I guess from just a basketball sense, you could say that it's entirely fair, but I think there's probably more to it. And when you're Embiid, you're not sitting around. Like, the relationship with a pro athlete in the organization in the city, like, how many athletes would be like, I've been really well compensated and all my dreams have come true and I haven't done enough. So it's all my fault. It's usually not what happens. So the frustration of the week, maybe there's nothing to worry about here unless it has been really quiet in the NBA trade landscape, next mad NBA player. My default rule was always, when it's quiet, just give it a few more months, because that's how this league had been going for a really long time. We had nothing really of significance this summer. The trade deadline show I did with Simmons, Super Bowl week, we spent 30 minutes on Bogdanovich going to the Knicks because there was nothing else to talk about. A little cap clear there for an OKC Charlotte deal. I mean, that was a dead trade deadline show. And I remember thinking about Bogdanovich going, knowing Tibbs, I wonder if Bogdanovich will even be part of the closing group with the Knicks. But we had nothing else to talk about. So the reminder is, once again, it's been kind of quiet. It's been kind of quiet since the Harden 3 trade requests in 3 years run. I guess you could say Donovan Mitchell a little bit, but that was more about a team that was entirely ready to turn the page and go in a different direction after they'd already moved Royce O'Neal, and then the Gobert part of that. Shout out to Windhorst. And then, Mitchell ends up in Cleveland. I think the Cleveland thing is kind of funny because there were so many behind the scenes rumblings, which I want to bring up with Giannis here, where it's like, Mitchell's probably gone. And that was just what everybody was kind of saying, the same thing and repeating everything else. And then Mitchell ends up staying and signing his extension, right, with Cleveland. So we already know that part of it. So after our timeline of Ben Simmons, I don't even know if Ben Simmons counts. I feel like he shouldn't, but he does. I probably could bring up Dame Lillard as like a soft version of it. The Garnett trade request, where you definitely want to be traded, but you definitely care, especially coming from a smaller market, of how you're perceived. You want it to be like a friendly divorce. Like, hey, I'm still going to be in the kid's life. And if you need any help around the house, like, I love using the DeWalt. So the Lillard one is real. It's just not like full blown anarchy like we've had with some other ones. I've also brought up this point, which I think is an interesting point, but not necessarily like a predictor of the future, that the U.S. guys and the international guys, the stars in the NBA, the track record is that it's 2 different approaches. The U.S. guys, when they're over it, are like, I'm out. I'm over it. You figure it out. The international guys have not done that. They just haven't. Doesn't mean it's never going to happen. I believe it will happen at some point, but I only bring it up not as a predictor, but as an interesting part of the discussion. So I think the question you have to ask is, did we get any real clues? Like, did we get any real clues throughout any of this? Well, my first thing would be, as bad as the Bucks are, talk to me 20 plus games in. I don't want to really think I know anything about a basketball team, especially one with somebody like Giannis still on it. I don't want to, it's an awful start. I get how bad it is, but let's see where we're at 20 plus games in. All right. The Sixers, the real Sixers haven't even started yet. So that record is completely irrelevant. Like, I can't judge a basketball thing that's not even the real thing yet. They just got Paul George back, and Embiid, after the suspension, is going to at least he's scheduled to be making his season debut here. So the real part of what the Sixers are, I can't even tell you what it looks like because none of us have even seen it. But I guess because I love talking about the NBA and this is part of the NBA product, I do have those moments where I wonder, like, what if it really did get that bad in Milwaukee this year? What if it was just a disastrous year for the Sixers? Like, what if it just doesn't work out? What would happen? Because the other part of this, that's the more modern version of what we've seen in the NBA, and I don't know that that has a direct correlation to the lack of angry trade demands that I've talked about here, is that you could see this happening a few years ago where the players just take the extensions, right? It is the NBA transfer portal. They don't, it's like, all right, well, sure. If you're going to, like Embiid, he could have waited it out, but based on his track record and his history of health issues, like when the Sixers did the extension, you could argue he just wanted the extension already. Like, is that a good thing? Is that a good sign? And they did it. And even with that extension, I don't think the stigma exists anymore of, well, you just signed this extension. Like Durant. Durant's 4-year extension with the Nets hadn't even kicked in yet. And he was like, fire everybody. Okay, you're not. Now I want out of here. And then he came back and they played up until the deadline. So the extensions feel irrelevant now about like, well, how will this look if I've signed an extension and it's going out until 28, 29, and I were to hint at the soft launch into a trade demand. Look, even with Embiid's health and how bad the back years could look, I think most front offices, if he were ever available, would say, oh my God, that's awful at the end. Okay, cool, let's do it. Because we don't have anything that matches that. Like maybe it's a 2-year window here, and then we take all of our medicine later on. Maybe some smart teams who just go like, look, we can't do something like that. Giannis is entirely different. Turns 30 soon. Yes, we can talk about his athleticism being the basis of his dominance, and as that declines, I think sometimes I think it's not even think. We are at a point now where we have to start thinking about the windows just being extended beyond anything we've ever seen growing up. So a less athletic Giannis at 33, probably still really, really good. And I think a Giannis thing, if it were to get to that, would be in a different market altogether. And it's why we like when you look at OKC, even though they've been like frugal about everything and saying, well, we don't want to do this, we don't do that. I mean, the crazy thing is OKC could maybe win this whole thing this year. And you could make some kind of argument of like, would you want to disrupt that? But that's not usually how basketball teams operate. They would go, what are we going to look like when our 5 best players are out there all at the same time? And we could add Giannis to that mix on top of everything that we already have. Like that would feel like the one time our press would be like, okay, these picks have been fun. It's fun to read all the stuff. And I have 17 and control of 31. And I have all these swaps. It's like, now you just go ahead and do it. I don't even know if we would even get to that point. It's going to be a tough rumor season though for Bucks fans. Like if you're a parent of a Bucks fan, you're going to be updating them a lot and a lot of different stuff. I think Bucks fans are looking at it as just all the other teams trying to mess with their franchise. I don't think it's just that. I think it's just what this sport is, and always having to be kind of on edge or at least just aware of what scenarios could play out if things are way below expectations. Well, the results are in, and we're doing a special taping late at night because it's probably the number one topic in America, and that is the college football rankings are out. And to join us at nighttime taping, I'm excited. We got Big Cat. What's up, man?
Hey, I feel good. I just passed a kidney stone. This is the first show I'm doing after that, literally like 30 minutes ago. So I'm feeling good. I'm ready to go. We got some rankings. We got everyone's tweeting politics. I'm tweeting a picture of my kidney stone and Maction clips. So I feel like I'm in the perfect sweet spot right now.
Yeah, that's right. So what do you got? 1 stone down, 3 to go?
Yeah, so the other 3 are still in the kidney and they're smaller, so hopefully they just stay there. I don't know if that's how that works. But yeah, I'm ready to go. I did vote today. I wanted to say I'm not looking for credit, okay? But I thought of you because I don't want to get into the whole thing. You know, we're going to do a redraftable in a minute. But There was a question, should you tax millionaires more? And I voted yes. So listen, not looking for credit, but if anyone wants to say, hey, good job, Big Cat, you're looking out for everyone else, that hurts you, that's fine.
Yeah, and you're not broke. So that means you really cared.
I saw the question and I just thought of you while I'm standing in the voting booth.
It was whatever. I can't win no matter what I say. So
you knew Can I just say two other things before we get into the college football? I didn't know when we were very good friends. I don't know when it became that I had to be booked to come on your show. And your booker, Allison, is wonderful. She's the best. But I didn't know that was a thing. She texted me and I was like, oh, I guess Ryan just lost my phone number. But I was happy to do this. I'm excited to talk college ball with you. I didn't fully put it all together until 2 nights ago. And I was like, wait, we're doing this podcast at 8 p.m. Central Time on election night.
Okay, but that's more about your schedule.
Yes,
that
true.
We're doing it tonight.
True.
So I would have done it tomorrow morning. As both of us have one eye over to what's potentially going down here.
No, I got Max.
On the booking thing.
Yeah.
On the booking thing, this is coming up. It's becoming a thing with people that I'm friends with. Like Sarah Walsh was the most offended of anybody, where she goes, I have to go through an intermediary with you. And I went, look, it's not a big time thing at all. It's that Ceruti and Allison put the puzzle pieces together for me. And if I don't have it visually in front of me at that time, it's just way easier than having to go back to them and coordinate the whole thing. So once you and I were like, hey, we're going to do this, then it was just way easier for me to be like, Allison, reach out to him so that you plug him into the right slot.
You, to your credit, you do it correctly. I do it incorrectly because we have our booker, Josh, who's phenomenal. If you're coming on, I'll text you and be like, hey, you want to come on? And then on a Tuesday at 4:00, he'd be like, wait, do we need a guest? I'm like, no, we already taped with Russillo. So you're right. You do it correctly. I do it incorrectly. You're thinking about everyone else, the whole team. I'm not.
Yeah, team guy, which, may surprise you with some of your political thoughts. Let's get to it. Let's get into this because as we have argued about this now for years, and my position is well documented that I didn't want to come to this, but much like the play-in game, when the play-in games happen in the NBA, it doesn't mean I will just sit and stew and not enjoy enjoyable basketball with things at stake. And it's the same thing with this. I think the most surprising thing was the lack of surprises. I was trying to figure out, as I looked at the AP stuff again before the show was on ESPN, and all those guys were great on the show, and we get to 12 teams, you count it down 25, and then it's the first two out, 13 and 14. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, I was trying to figure out, because the committee usually would give us a couple surprises where then the AP would almost catch up to the selection committee a week later if nothing was dramatically changed in Saturday's slate. And if you look at this, the top 13 schools, it's the same 13. The only change is they have Ohio State 2 and Georgia 3. So if you were to ask me, what was the surprise? The first thing was that there wasn't really something that felt completely out of whack in comparison to how the AP has been going the last couple of weeks.
Okay, so I have a couple surprises, but I want to address first your wrong take about the college football playoff. Now, I'll admit, I got to the right answer with bad work. Remember when you would have to scribble work and you're looking in the back of the book for the math answer and you're I'm going to pretend that I did the work here and I got it right. So the 12-team playoff is perfect. If you look at this field right now, I don't think it's just 4 teams that can win it all like it has been in years past. So the 12-team playoff is perfect for right now in college football. If this was a 12-team playoff 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I think you would have been right. But because the NIL and the transfer portal has flattened the competition a little bit and there's more parity, I'm very, very excited for the 12-team playoff. So I got to the right answer that we needed a 12-team playoff. I just didn't expect it to be beneficial for the NIL and the transfer portal to get us to this point where there's more parity in a sport that usually has no parity. Because remember those years where it was there's 2 teams that can win it all, maybe 3, and we do a 4-team playoff. Now I really do think there are 5 or 6 teams that I could confidently say could win the whole thing. And yeah, of course, Oregon has looked better than everyone, and Georgia is, Georgia's had its bumps, but they look really good still. So that you have been wrong, but I'm right, you're wrong. I just got there in a fucked up way. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
because you told me I was wrong forever. Then you actually apologized to me in
Yeah.
August for saying that I was right about this. And then a couple weeks ago, you sent me a text, and then I think there was a public statement made where you were retracting the apology.
Yes.
That just once again proved. Here's what I would tell you. There's still hope though for you being wrong.
No.
Because you and others that think now parity is the new normal because we're 9 weeks into one season.
Of course.
Like, I do not understand this. Like, I look at the world through like plate tectonics. Okay. I think you have to see things move for a long period of time to come up with some definitive answer. So did the NIL and the transfer portal really lead to parity, or did there happen to be a year that feels like there is parity? Because if you're saying that it's only happening for that, well, then you're completely flawed part of the position is that. So that means prior to this, we've never just had a season of parity because that was an older system. So maybe there is parity. Maybe it's wide open. Maybe we get to 9 teams who are not going, no way, they can't win a national championship, which is an exercise that we should do. But for everyone to be in a rush that college football is now forever changed and this is the new norm, I need multiple seasons of seeing this play out before I'm ready to accept it as the new normal.
And that is the difference between you and me. We are like yin and yang, oil and water when it comes to this stuff. You need like 5 years of data to then be like, all right, here's my opinion. I need maybe a week and a half to be like, yep, this is what it's going to happen for the rest of my life. My pushback on that would be Diego Pavia. That's a transfer portal guy who Vanderbilt like doesn't have the season they're having if they don't get a Diego Pavia. The entire Indiana roster, Cam Ward at Miami, like these are the moves that you can get some of these big time players that can change the scope of where your program is going in a flash, and it doesn't take years and years and years of stacking recruiting on recruiting on recruiting that only the big dogs could do.
Right, like a homegrown guy like Cam Newton.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, he stole some laptops.
Accused. Don't say anything because I haven't got to that episode of the Hernandez doc yet.
Okay, wait. All right. So here are my surprises. You ready for my surprises?
Yeah, give them to you.
I think I am one. I understand the case against Indiana. I'll make the case for Indiana. They've killed everyone, and I know how the committee usually works. They need like the data point of a good win outweighs a weak undefeated schedule. But if you look at Indiana and like in Ohio State, and I get it, Ohio State, their win against Penn State on the road is better than anything Indiana's done. They have 2 common opponents, Nebraska and Michigan State. Indiana killed both. Ohio State struggled with Nebraska. So I think Indiana should have been a little higher. SMU should be higher. BYU, I think also should be higher because they are undefeated. BYU did beat SMU. SMU beat Pitt. SMU beat Louisville on the road. SMU should be in the top 12 as well.
Yeah, because if you look at the dispersal of the first 12, SEC 4, Big Ten 4, ACC 1, the Clemson loss, kind of eliminates them from all of this. It's also kind of a problem that I have. Like, I think Miami's good.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have a really hard time with them at 12-0 of thinking, like, I don't even know if I would have them ahead of BYU if BYU's undefeated.
Yeah, Miami's interesting because Cam Ward is so phenomenal and he can get them out of everything, but their defense gets them into these problems. And it feels like they're playing that, the Virginia Tech game, the Cal game, where it's
the Duke game.
The Duke game. Yeah, I mean, they ended up killing Duke at the end, but like, the beginning of the game, it was hairy there. Notre Dame, though. Why is SMU not ahead of Notre Dame? That makes no sense to me. Notre Dame has the worst loss of any of the teams in the top 12. They obviously have a very good win in Texas A&M on the road to start the season. But SMU has beaten. They have a loss that's aged very well with BYU. When that game happened, we thought BYU was nothing. They're undefeated, and SMU has killed Pitt, a ranked Pitt team, and then went on the road and beat a ranked Louisville team. So why is SMU behind Notre Dame? That makes no sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense to me either. And I might just be kind of down on Notre Dame from the summer and going like, yeah, they might be all right. I thought the A&M win was a really big deal because I just thought it was a tough game. It's opening night game down there. The place is wild. And even though it wasn't pretty, it also looked like they had lost the game early on a penalty. And it's like, okay, this thing's probably over. And they fought back and they found a way. And the numbers, just across the board, you're like, what do I make of this? It's like, well, you had to watch and appreciate whoever won that game because that was a tough battle. And now since then, you're like, what else is there remaining with their schedule that's going to get me excited about them. So SMU feels like they're trending in a better direction momentum-wise than Notre Dame does.
Yeah.
And it's probably to the point, like some of these teams where if you go, okay, Indiana, Georgia, who you picking? All right, do you really need to discuss it? You picking it? Like Notre Dame, SMU, to me, is an actual conversation.
Yeah, agreed. It absolutely is a conversation because I don't understand the resume if you put them up against each other. I don't know why. Navy, obviously, the way that Notre Dame beat Navy was impressive, and Navy was ranked at the time. I didn't think that Navy. I thought Navy was playing bad teams, kind of like your argument with Indiana, and it's like a nice story. We all want to get around it, but I expected that result, and that result happened. The other one that we should mention is there is that world where like Army is still alive and everything ahead of them. And I know that Navy, we saw what Notre Dame looked like against Navy. I think Army's better than Navy, but it's crazy that Army could crash the whole party and be, they could even get into a top 4, right? Like if chaos happens, if BYU loses.
Wait, you're talking about Army
winning
as the group of 5?
Yeah.
But you're taking Boise out then, right?
Yeah, I guess you'd have to take Boise out too, but there would be chaos, but Army's still there, Tulane's still there. This is why I love the 12-team playoff. There are 22 teams that can conceivably say they still have a shot at getting in, and you have elimination games coming up this weekend with LSU and Alabama. Ole Miss and Georgia's an elimination game for Ole Miss. This is why the 12-team playoff's great to me because we're in November and there are 20 teams that can say, hey, if we win the rest of our games, we got a real shot. Colorado's got a real shot.
Yeah, when you look at Boise, I mean, good luck trying to find a loss out of that because the Mountain West teams they have remaining, and Nevada, who's terrible, Wyoming isn't any good this year, and then what is it, San Jose State? Yeah, because they just beat San Diego State. So
San Jose State, don't sleep on San Jose State. San Jose State has one of the best wide receivers in the entire college football. Have you seen him, Nick Nash? The dude is ridiculous.
Yeah, no relation to the Cash Kid, right?
I don't think any relation to the Cash Kid. He's got here's one of his lines. Now this was against Kennesaw State, this is back-to-back games for Nick Nash. 17 receptions, 225 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then the next game was 16 receptions, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns. They just throw it to him constantly. And I know we're going to beat, but I just wanted to shout out Nick Nash.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got him in there. All right, let's go back to the top and kind of work our way down here because the Oregon thing, we've got it. They like Ohio State better than Georgia, as we told you at the top. But Georgia would be the 2 seed as SEC champ, and Ohio State behind Oregon makes them the 5. So we already covered that. Who do you think is better? Who do you think has a better argument? Give me both answers. Who do you think has a better argument to be number 2? Who do you think should be number 2?
I think Georgia should be number 2, and I think they're better than Ohio State. If I had to go gun to my head right now.
I agree. Now, the thing that I should be able to use is like, hey, I like Beck better than Will Howard. I don't like Beck at all right now.
Neither do I.
Mess. But
too much eye black.
Yeah, a lot.
Way too much eye black.
No, like when he comes into the tunnel with that look, you're like, you got to be really good. You got to stop throwing interceptions if you're going to go sleeve and some of the accessories and all that kind of stuff. And then it's like, man, like you don't want to have to tell a kid to get his sleeve filled in. But like you got to stop throwing 3 picks a game. Some of them are so bad.
He looks like when you play NCAA football and you're like, let me just go crazy with accessories. And you're like, just chill out, man. Like just go play quarterback. You don't need to do this. So I'm with you on Beck. He's been bad. The case for Georgia over Ohio State would be Georgia. Obviously, they've had a couple games where it's like not looked great. Kentucky, even the Mississippi State game was weird. But Georgia, when it boils down to it, Georgia had one really bad half. Right? They had one really bad half. And I know that Ohio State only lost by 1 to Oregon, but Georgia then went into Texas, and I think Texas is better than Penn State. So that win to me is more impressive, and they killed Texas. That wasn't really a game that was close, whereas Ohio State, like that was a coin flip game. So, yeah, I would take Georgia over Ohio State right this second.
I agree on all that. I think the best Ohio State's looked all year is their loss. So, even more so than the win against Penn State. And I think sometimes the history of Penn State kind of plays in all that, even though I still feel better about Penn State closing this season than I did them last season. I also just don't think the list is very long of teams that could go into Texas and make them look that bad in that half and destroy them. And on top of it, Beck not even playing that well. What that D-line did, and I said at the time, like, I think it's the most impressive unit, the most impressive performance by one unit I've seen in any game all season long. And I think the list stops after Georgia of teams that could go there and do it. I'm assuming a lot, assuming that no other team can do it. It's just the way they did it, and to that offensive line and to Ewers, who, you start stacking up all these guys that are ranked to be first-round quarterbacks too. It's like, how many of these guys can actually go in the first round if you've been benched your last season before the draft? But we're on the same page there. But look, one of the things that I always try to tell everybody about it, after having the committee chair on the radio show all those years and the podcast all the years, and then sitting in mock runs of this thing with people from the committee, which was really just a great learning experience, is that whoever is like at the head, who's the media presence for the committee, like they basically never want to be tied down to anything, knowing how annoying all of us would be. Is like, hey, how much does conference rankings matter? And they're like, it doesn't. It's like, well, wait, you said, if anybody had said, yeah, we actually thought like this conference was better than this conference was third, or this conference was fifth, then we would hold it against them for like going into depth on any single explanation. So when they asked Ward Manuel on the Ohio State, Georgia part of it, it was pretty clear. Like, he was entirely succinct about the whole thing, which is like the loss at Oregon is just better than the loss at Bama for Georgia. So done and done. So our whole Texas point that we agree on, it seemed like in the room that wasn't enough to just be more impressed with the loss at what is their number one team in the country, which again makes sense.
Yeah, and it could also be, like I said, the Georgia has struggled in a couple games. Maybe that's also against them. I know Ohio State struggled against Nebraska, but the Georgia-Kentucky game was weird. The Georgia-Mississippi State game was it was Georgia. I never thought Georgia was going to lose that game. They were in control, but it was a 30+ point spread, and they only so. They
gave up a bunch of yards to Van Buren there at the end. And at that point, like, Mississippi State looked like the absolute doormat of the SEC.
Right.
So I think that had something to do with like that Saturday. You're thinking, do I have to check back in on the Georgia game?
Right.
It was one of those deals, right?
Right.
It's like every Arizona Cardinals game in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. Don't we got to? I have that on the list of things we got to talk about at the end here.
Okay. All right. So then you can start getting into some of the stuff where, like, the pollsters still love Tennessee more than I do, but I understand why. I can't really tell them that they're wrong, but part of that also for me is I thought Tennessee had like a chance to be in one of these 4 slots. Like, at one point this year, I was just all the way in and went, I think they have a chance to maybe be better than any of the teams in the SEC, win the entire conference. And even though they have a better record than everybody that's not named Texas and Georgia, I don't see it. I don't see it. And they feel like they're still getting the benefit of the doubt there. And obviously they still really like Bama to have them at 11 with the 2 losses over some of the other 2-loss options that you have in the SEC.
Yeah, I agree with you on Tennessee. It's just, and it's unfair to expect more out of Nico. He's a freshman, and I like their defense a lot, but I agree with you. I think that they're in for a tough one against Georgia in a couple weeks, and that will kind of sort itself out.
Yeah, the rest of the schedules, like A&M still has, I don't know if it's the easiest. I mean, because it's New Mexico State, it's at Auburn, but then they finish up with number 5 Texas.
Yeah.
LSU's got Bama this weekend at Florida, then Vandy, which is a sneakier one. It'd be classic LSU to win the next 3 and then lose to Oklahoma at home. Ole Miss still has Georgia. All right, at least that one's at home. So that whole block of all these SEC teams, they're just going to start eliminating each other here throughout all this. So I don't know how they get more than 4.
Yeah.
And there's a chance if Bama loses to LSU, A&M loses to Texas, then LSU loses to somebody else. Like, Ole Miss feels like it's almost impossible in front of them because Florida's actually like a little bit of a tougher out now, though. I don't know.
They're on their third quarterback, kid who played at Yale.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I can't get too upset. I guess looking at all this, I don't have something that I'm ragingly upset about.
No, the only 2 sticking points is, like I said, I would put it BYU and Indiana a little bit higher. And that's just a personal preference. Like I said, I don't think that Indiana's better than Texas, but I would do that right now, knowing it's all in front of them. I would do it, and I would have SMU ahead of Notre Dame. That's the one. If you said I had to pick one thing, I think SMU has a better resume than Notre Dame. Notre Dame should still be in if they finish off their schedule, but SMU, their only loss is to BYU, who's undefeated, and Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois at home. So I just that one is the one that that sticks out to me. The interesting thing with this whole thing is going to be if there is chaos in the ACC and the Big 12, how many teams from the SEC and the Big 10 are going to make it in? Because you would think it's going to be Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana, no matter what, right? Or not no matter what, but those four feel like...
If Indiana were to get throttled...
You think they would get out?
Well, at that point, if you get destroyed by the only real opponent, that's the whole part of the expansion thing that has driven me crazy since the very beginning, is that you can go 11 games without playing anybody and then get destroyed by the one team. And in some cases, for like the Penn State model of previous years that everybody's heard me talk about like way too much, but I just couldn't believe it when Fox ran that graphic.
Yeah.
It was a Penn State game weeks ago. And they go, in this system of the last, 4-team expansion, Penn State be in the playoffs 6 times.
That's
more than everybody else. And you just go, well, why is that? Because they were sneaky fucking awesome? Well, no, it's because of what we're laying out here with Indiana. And so if you only play one big boy all year and you get housed by them, and then it's like, all right, here's your playoff bid. Like, we should have a problem with anyone getting in that way. And it has nothing to do with Indiana.
Agreed. The only counterpoint I would say to that is you don't know who's going to be down year to year. Nebraska has been a disappointment. Michigan has been a massive disappointment. So Indiana beats Michigan this week by, 30. But you can't say that like, oh, well, Michigan I understand what you're saying, but like, that's kind of, I have a little bit more leeway to a team that just catches a couple breaks in their schedule. And this might be because of the team I root for. And we've had years where we're, 12-1, and I know that we're not one of the top 4 teams.
Because you would tell me constantly leading up to the Big Ten championship game, you'd be like, "Don't pick us."
Listen, I'm having a crisis with my friends on the group text. I have to be the voice of reason because we're going through a crisis at Wisconsin. I'm hopefully going to figure it out with some NIL Stella Blue Coffee money, but we're going through a crisis, and I have to keep reminding them that we played in the Big Ten West for a decade, and even the years that we won 11 games, we were not as good as we thought we were. And the fall off that is perceived right now is not as severe as we think it is. It's that everything's changed around us. And it's kind of like the inverse of Penn State, where Penn State is now everything changed around them. And now they're going to get to say they go to the playoff every year when nothing has changed. So, it's interesting navigating that, where you're like, all right, where were we like 10 years ago? Now that we look at this, like we weren't what we thought we were. We were good, but we weren't an 11-1 team that should have been in a top 4 spot.
So let me do it this way: if Indiana, all right, Ole Miss is 16 right now. If Indiana, say, gets destroyed by Ohio State,
yep,
and Ole Miss runs the table,
okay,
and is 10-2.
Okay.
Who would you have in? Just like in a vacuum. Like those are the last 2 teams to pick for the 12 spots.
I hate that you're doing this to me. I mean, I would probably take Ole Miss. That sucks, though. That was dirty what you just did to me. Because it would be Ole Miss beating Georgia. Yeah. No, you have Ole Miss beating Georgia. And
right. They'll played South Carolina. They'll played LSU.
Kentucky's really bad, though. Kentucky's really bad, and they lost at home to Kentucky. That was a really bad loss.
It was a bad loss.
That was a really bad loss. That's a tough one, though. I'm just rooting for chaos at this point. And I don't want chaos. I want chaos in the fact that like SEC and Big Ten kind of start beating each other. I don't really want the chaos where the scenario that I laid out earlier and BYU running the table, Miami running the table, I think would kind of suck. Because then you would it would just be 9 Big Ten or SEC teams, Like I want.
But what if they're the most deserving, though?
I know, but I want to see. I want to see a Colorado. I want to see a SMU. I want to see these teams crash it. And
yeah, but boredom shouldn't be a reason to be invited to something.
That's true.
And this is the other part, is that you have 18 teams in the Big Ten. All right, so like when you look at Miami's schedule, Miami may be one of the 4 best teams in the country. All right, I'm willing to go there with it because Cam has been that good. The offense is so good. I love the receivers. You're right, as we've already touched on. There's like 3 up and down moments with them this year where you're going, when's this going to catch up to them? But when you look at what they run through, and you can say, well, at the end of it, they're still going to have to play somebody in the ACC title game. It's like, yeah, but that's that's like an easy 12-0 because of how screwed up the expansion has made the conferences. And like, not everybody's coming. Like, there are teams that are going through two entirely different experiences playing in the same conference.
I agree. You know who the like poster child of this is UCLA. UCLA. You didn't think I was going to say UCLA there, but UCLA.
No, but I love it because I already know what you're going to say.
UCLA is playing good football. Okay, UCLA is playing good football. I know that sounds crazy. When you look back at UCLA's schedule, they played Indiana, who we obviously didn't know at the time was going to be 9-0 and really, really good. They played this is consecutive weeks. Indiana, at LSU, Oregon, at Penn State, Minnesota. Like, that's not a fair schedule. I agree with you. That's not like they're playing good ball, and they just went through a 5-game gauntlet that was just not like that happened at the beginning of the year with new coach, and it was just like this team looks dead. And now they beat Rutgers, they go to Nebraska, they beat Nebraska. Like, they're not as bad as people have thought they were. They just played a schedule that was way harder than anyone else in the country.
Sounds like somebody likes UCLA plus the 5.5 at home against Iowa.
Maybe but I can't do that because then people will be like, well, that's because Iowa beat Wisconsin 42-10, which was very embarrassing. I have some questions for you. You ready for them?
Yep. Pen is ready.
Heisman.
Yeah. It's been Hunter for me for a while.
Okay.
I think this is the kind of year where you go, why are we just defaulting to a quarterback on one of the playoff favorite teams? Cam Ward's terrific, but I just think if you explained it to somebody who didn't know anything about football, I'd be like, well, who gets the award? Well, it's supposed to be for the person that's the best player in college football. Well, what's that guy doing? Well, he's doing something nobody's ever done before.
Yeah.
Charles Woodson had 30 catches. This guy plays full games at both positions and is elite. And by the way, a couple weeks in, I was done with Colorado. I thought they were going to suck again. I was totally wrong. They fixed a lot of things, and I think they're good enough to justify him getting the award.
Okay.
So, there you go.
That's a good answer. My unbiased take is it's Travis Hunter. And what he's been doing is we've never seen it. 120 plus snaps a game. He's won offensive and defensive player of the conference player of the week at one point this season. He is legitimately a top 10 receiver and a top 5 cornerback in college football. Like, that's stupid. And then my biased take is I have Travis Hunter 40-1 preseason. So
yeah, I know.
That's all I've been talking about.
When I did my open on him, you were like, good stuff, keep it going. And then I was like, well, what kind of ticket do you have on it?
I'm
like
so
40-1.
I'm so fucked up in the head that I think that I actually could maybe influence like 1 or 2 voters, because we did this last year with Jaden. We bet on Jaden.
You could do it. By the way, you realize how many Heisman voters there are? There's a million of them. So there's definitely a couple.
I know. We did this with Jaden last year where, if you went back and asked me, maybe Michael Penix, because he was more impactful to the story of college football that year. But we bet on him like in the middle of the season. And then every single week we were just like, Jaden Daniels got to be the Heisman.
Yeah, because like last year when I was making the Wembanyama push for Defensive Player of the Year, because I just felt like in those games, and then the argument was, well, overall defensively, they're not as good as Minnesota. I was like, well, yeah, but look at all the dogs that Minnesota has surrounding Rudy on top of everything else. And by the way, it's not like I thought Rudy sucked on defense. I voted him second. And then somebody was like, keep doing that, keep pushing that. And I was like, oh, this guy's going to bet on it.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't care about my basketball acumen.
But you don't. You didn't. Right. You didn't have a bet. I'll tell you when I have a bet. All right.
No, not me. Somebody else. Somebody else reached out. I can't bet on it.
Yeah, I know you can't.
Care.
I know you can't.
Okay.
All right. Next question. What does Penn State do with James Franklin?
Be careful what you wish for. They win enough. He recruits at a really high level. And 1 year it'll probably break your way where you'll get Michigan and Ohio State down at the same year. I mean, it doesn't seem likely, but Michigan went through a bunch of lean years where they wanted Harbaugh out. I've used this Harbaugh explanation numerous times because I always said throughout all of it, like, he really only had the one disastrous year. He was flirting with a playoff spot in the 4-team format. So he lost to Ohio State. Michigan hadn't beaten Ohio State for a bunch of years in a row. So nothing was really all that different. It's just that he brought all this attention upon himself with the videos and who's got it better than us and sleeping over kids' houses on recruiting trips and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, okay, well, you promised more than this. Yeah, sure. You were hoping that it would be more than this, but it still isn't that bad other than that one really bad COVID year where all these college football voices, some I like, some I don't like, were like, just the fire everybody party. That group of college football analysts who's just like, I have nothing else to say. Just fucking fire everybody all the time and I'll get a hit out of this. I think with Franklin, that it's a light beer version of that.
Yeah.
right? Because the Penn State losses to Ohio State don't hurt as much as the Ohio State losses for Michigan do, for a bunch of obvious reasons. You don't have to be from that part of the country or be a Big Ten fan to understand that. So you look at how often he wins, even though I think a lot of it's schedule inflated that we've already covered with their fake playoff appearances. Be careful what you wish for, because unless you're going to, like, I think of all the schools that look in the mirror and see, like, think about what Oklahoma fans are thinking right now post Venables. They're thinking like, okay, well, we're a top 5 job. It's like, you're not a top 5 job anymore. Like Oklahoma, there's a bigger conversation that no one in Norman, like, they're already mad about it pre-happening before they had a bad season. And we'd have to see more seasons like this from the Sooners to like fully buy in. But there's no way it's ever going to be what it was in the Big 12, where you just won it even in down years because Texas was messed up.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you, there's all of these fan bases, and Penn State would certainly be one of them, where it's like, you may think there's this hit list. Like, think who A&M ended up going with. And Elko looks like he's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
But it was like, at the time, it was kind of like, oh.
It's not
Elko?
the splashy thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. The good news is Penn State, I think next year they play Ohio State, then they don't play them for like 3 or 4 years. So it will solve itself in that respect.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good reason for expansion.
Yeah. It is crazy though, because he can't get over that hump. And I would understand how it's frustrating, but I agree with you. Like, you can't. You basically are just hoping, like, the limitations, but to change course at this point, you might get into serious pain that you're not having right now. My terrible like fantasy, like, fucked up how everything plays out. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley takes the Bears job. James Franklin goes to USC. Kurt Signetti goes to Penn State. Penn State stays good. USC gets good. The Bears suck even more.
I love how it came back to it still not working out for the Bears. I gotta be honest, like, when you started that thing, you landed the plane.
Yeah, I did.
You really did.
Signetti's a Pittsburgh guy. Franklin has obviously flirted with USC, and Lincoln Riley has, Caleb Williams. So it's not the craziest thing.
Yeah, because, I mean, you just presented something like, here's something that's not going to happen, but it'll be fun. So for me to take it seriously and go through all the reasons why, like, defeats the purpose of the fun part of it. The Lincoln thing in USC, you want to talk about, like, not, like, who's more disappointed post that? USC or, well, it has to be USC more so than Oklahoma.
I would say Colin Cowherd.
Yeah, Cowherd's probably the most disappointed.
Yeah.
I love, look, I was on the phone with him right before we started this, just bullshitting for half an hour. So that's my guy. But when he got into the Lincoln going to the West Coast, I texted him, was like, did you just do a monologue based on the reasons why you moved to Manhattan Beach? And then just applied them to Lincoln Riley.
His video when USC was up against Michigan at halftime.
No, Penn State.
Oh, it was up against Penn State. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That was a tough one.
That video, that was, credit to him. He was like, it was like
he left it up.
It was like a 90s like Adam Sandler villain video. Like I got chills watching it. He was Shooter McGavin somehow. I don't know how he did that. It was something else. But yeah, USC, that's a weird situation. All right, next question. Are you ready? Are you ready to apologize about Jared Goff?
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, great.
But I wasn't wrong early on.
Okay, great.
I wasn't wrong early on, and then I almost felt like I had to say something to him because, Jesus Christ, Teddy Purcell gets a shout out, I think, every time I'm on any podcast now. So Teddy's friends with Goff, and I was with a buddy that played for the Kings. So we all got together and had a couple beers together. And it was funny because, like, my buddy was the hockey guy. So he and Teddy were just like, it's like they'd known each other years, right? And then Goff is asking me about the Warriors because he's like the biggest NBA guy. And I just kept being like, do I bring up the big cat thing with him just to start like with a clean slate with Goff? Because, like, we live in the same town. I'll probably be running into him a little bit. But I can't imagine after getting to know him for an hour that he would have ever cared.
No,
right.
He wouldn't. And that was another one where I probably lucked into.
You got weird about it with me at one point.
Well, I mean,
you
he's
kind
a
of
friend.
dropped, like,
You got weird about it. You were nasty.
No, because you said something to me once. You were like, "Take it easy. He's a friend." I'm like, "Boy, he came in the pod a few fucking times."
No, he's a friend.
Text him every.
He's a friend.
I think you're a little loose with friendship.
No, Jared Goff is a friend. He wanted me to go when he got drafted. He got drafted here in Chicago, and he asked me to come to his party, and I was like, I don't know, dude. I'm like 33 or 32. I was like, I don't think this is for me. He's been a fan and a friend for a very long time. We stayed at his house.
Okay, you actually are tighter with him than I realized. So,
he's my guy. But
because you got weird about it, and then I was kind of like, I'm wrong when they traded him. Like, I'm wrong. And then he's so
did get
good
weird
now.
About it. I'll admit that I am very loyal to my guys.
I think Goff is so good now that when he has a bad game, when I talk about it on the podcast, I'll be like, well, that's not happening again.
Yeah.
Like, it takes a long time for me to just get all the scars out of my head of like the times where and now, like, he had like 2 40 QBR games in a row and they were still winning. And I was like, the great news is that's not going to happen again.
Yeah. He's been awesome.
You've got me.
He's
got me,
awesome.
And he got the extension. He deserves it. So that's a win for Big Cat.
Okay.
Sounds like you have more.
A win for you. A win for you. I know you're a big stock guy. You trade. You're on the market. You're on the street like Nancy Pelosi. Have you ever dumped a stock at a better time than the Bears?
No, I couldn't. And like my picks have never been worse right now. Like, the joke is that I'm usually always around 500. So like when people give you a hard time, you're like, oh, cool. So like you're fading me and you're also losing just as much. As you know, you give out picks. It's a tough crowd. It's a tough crowd. My picks have never been worse. And I had this whole premise this year of like, what's my gut tell me? And that'll be the couch qualifier. Let's fade the public money. That'll be the other qualifier. And then I'll get one pick in from guys that work in Vegas that I'm like, hey, just give me the pick that seems to kind of the momentum of the smart people. I don't want to call it sharp money because that just leads to all this other idea that like I think I'm super plugged in and I know that I'm not. I was like, let's have some fun with trying to attack this from 3 different ways. The public money has been a fucking disaster. Okay? The sharp one's the only one that's even close to 500 and it's below 500. And then I had lost like 5 in a row from the couch. And the last one was the Bears -2.5.
Yeah.
And so compounded with everything else, I am willing to renew it though. I'm not going to auto non-renew my subscription to the Bears fandom. I only made it 7 games.
Yeah.
But depending on who the new head coach, Cliff Kingsbury?
No, Ben Johnson. But they won't hire Ben Johnson. They'll never hire anyone who's good because they don't want anyone who is bigger than the franchise since Ditka. That's just a fact.
I think Kingsbury would be the answer.
Okay, I have one last question. And I think we might need to get
Speaking of stocks, you checking this after hours stuff right now?
What's going on?
Whoa.
What's going on in the stock market?
Check out some of these tech after hours numbers.
I'm so financially illiterate. I don't even know. I think I have stocks. I know I have stocks.
I'm pretty sure you do.
I don't know what stocks I have.
I think I got you into a couple, so
you might have.
I know 2 that you have.
All right. The last question is going to be: we might need someone to join us here. Ceruti, I got a question.
Oh, okay.
He made you guys share one Coors Light?
No.
Because I feel like I wish Kyle was here because I feel like I was the start of this a year ago when I basically submarined the podcast. People
there was a lot of
pissed
tension.
at me. Pissed at me. I apologize to all the Russillo heads out there. That was not my intention. I was just I had no Kyle. I'd met him a couple times when we were in LA. So I thought that it was okay to air that DM. Mistake by me, but listen, things happened after that, and then we get to the point where you guys get the invite over and you watch Ryan take notes on NBA and you share a Coors Light. Did you have a straw? Was it 2 straws for the one Coors Light? What happened?
There was no straw. It was we each got one Coors Light, just one. I don't even know what the fridge situation was like. I kind of tried to follow you in there and get the scene, but you kind of blocked me off, so I didn't even know. Maybe
no,
you
there's
only
a
had
beer.
3.
There's a beer drawer.
Ceruti, let me help you. Yeah. It's stocked because we came over to Russillo's house.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
That's cool.
No, we came over. He ordered us 2 dinners. Awesome. He was pissed because one of the dinners they didn't show up my order. He called up and he got everything fixed.
I didn't call.
Yeah, actually,
Chenoweth did.
Yeah, Chenoweth did. We had the vibes going. There was no NBA to take notes on. It was a great night when we went over his house.
I didn't need to know that. That's a tough thing
but
to hear.
You know what? If you would come over and it was OKC Denver to start the season.
True. But I would have had no problem with that because I feel like I could sit next to you and just not talk for hours. I mean, it's like the best in show. We could talk or not talk for hours.
But that's the thing. It wasn't. We were talking. We were having a good time. It's just classic Ryan. There was no planning, no nothing. And in his defense, it was a little last minute thing. But here's the thing though, if I didn't, and by the way, Big Cat, you're developing a bit of a reputation here though for like tanking things. Like Paulo, have him on the pod, out for 2 months.
Listen,
about Ryan's pod. Now the crew
guys
completely
were
on
mad.
rocks. Yeah,
a lot of our listeners were super mad at Big Cat.
They were super mad at me, and I understand. But I also I thought it was funny, and you guys got an invite to Ryan's house out of it. So kind of job, mission accomplished. George Bush, Paolo. By the way, that one I've been a Paolo guy from day one. Everyone knows that. Ryan kind of stole him from us.
Yeah.
So no, but that Paolo I'll hand up. That one's on me. I'll take that one, Ceruti. That's fair.
Yeah.
Did you realize that the day the Paolo interview aired, I went to the Clippers game that night to watch my guy Scoot, and I checked in at the media place to get my credential, and the girl behind the counter was like, "I'm a huge fan of the pod," and I was like, "Oh yeah," and she's like, "I'm a Magic fan," and then she's like, "Paolo kind of cooked you though." On your pod. And I was like, awesome. Good stuff.
Let me just
can we talk about that?
Yeah. For the listeners, I want to say this right now. Ryan's the best guy because Ryan, I consider a very good friend. I called him after and I told him, I was like, we're going to cut this part because it was kind of like, you did
tell everybody what happened in the interview for you.
Paolo comes in, great guy. We were like, I obviously know you're the biggest Paolo guy. You've been a Paolo guy from day one. So we obviously started doing a bit where we're like, we're like Paolo, we're the biggest guys like in your corner. Like we're gonna defend you everywhere. Like there is this guy.
Off of the Coach O LSU stuff that we had out this summer. But go ahead,
just trolling.
Max Homa,
just trolling, just trolling. Yeah, little sprinkle of Max. And we're like, well, there's one other guy, Paolo, Ryen Russillo. He's a good friend of ours. He defends you too. And Paolo was just like, who? And we're like, no, you went on his show, and he looked to his guys who were standing off camera. He's like, I went on his show, and they're like, yeah, you went on Ryen Russillo's show. So this happens. I feel awful because, like, obviously we were joking about being Paolo guys, but like that kind of sucks because you do a Zoom interview, you don't expect someone to remember you, but I didn't want to set Ryan up for that moment. I called Ryan right after, and I was like, hey, Paolo kind of cooked you. We're gonna cut that, and Ryan was like, no, fucking keep it in. That's hilarious. So. That was a cool move by Russillo because I was like, this kind of sucks. I would kind of hate that if that happened to me. But Ryan was like, no, fuck it. That's funny.
So
keep it in.
He called me probably soon after that and to be like, hey, I have a funny story for you about Paolo. And he told me the story and I was like, I'm like, I would be shocked if Paolo knew who you were. I don't think that's that crazy. I don't think it's crazy
exactly.
at all.
That's the other thing. It was, it's a young kid. It's over a Zoom, and like we had a good time. I thought we enjoyed each other, but there's never any way that I would have expected him to be like, "Oh yeah, double R."
The only reason I thought, well, first of all, I'm going to give you more credit. You're a big deal, and a lot of people listen to this show, so it's like I thought it was because Paolo is into podcasting. Like he does podcasts. I think he does Old Man in the Three with those guys every now and then. So I thought like he's kind of aware, and you are the number one Paolo guy, so. I would assume if a guy like someone in the media is just ride or die, you're tweeting about Paolo every fucking night. So I
think it works the other way.
Yeah.
Okay, I made an assumption. I love Ryan more than Paolo. Clearly, that was my bad.
That's
I think
fair.
I think
Closer
you'd
in
have
age.
more. I think he would recognize you more and know you more if you were like, "Hey, man, playoff turnovers, inefficiency, not sure the jump shot." If you were like a Paolo hater,
take it easy.
I'm just saying
sure.
that's how it works. That's how it works. Guys don't remember dudes that like them; they remember guys that don't like them.
Because he did remember my tweets about Duke in Coach K's last year. So you're right on that. And I'll say this right now.
That was so funny.
I'm
by
not
the way.
stupid.
That was so funny.
So
he was like, "Oh, Barstool Big Cat, we just lost. Here we go." Like the way he said it, like he wasn't 100% sure what it was while he was a kid at Duke.
Just riding him.
But
I'm not stupid. If I walked into Paolo right now on the street, there's no way he'd know who I was. So I just thought because Ryan is number one Paolo guy, and then he got hurt, so that's my fault.
No.
Well, look, next time you and Goff get together, you can invite Paolo over.
That's true. So wait, back to the one Coors Light real quick. Are we going to get
each guy got one Coors Light?
Okay,
each guy got one individually.
Everyone got
it was
one.
A school night. We all had to work. Ceruti had to be up at 4:30 in the morning. Kyle got 2 sets of TaylorMades out of the thing and 2 Benchmade knives. Okay, so he was thrilled.
You were doing the cheater gift package.
I was also offered a knife, by the way. I wasn't checking a bag, so it might have been a problem.
I was just handing out knives to everybody, and no one else could take the knives. And then he forgot that I respect smokers. Like I respect smokers' defiance so much that I almost, when I see a smoker now as a non-smoker, I'm like, fucking right. And I point at him or something. Like when the guys at ESPN were still outside in those rain tarps smoking
next to a
where
dumpster.
It would have been normal. Yeah. And I'm like, man, this guy's still just out there doing it. And I'd be like, I'd give him like a point, even though, and then they'd like hand me, like hold up the cigarette pack. Like, do you want one? But like, no, it's fucking gross, but you guys are awesome. And so Kyle pretended he was like, oh, okay, well, now I need a cigarette. When he immediately wanted one as soon as he walked in the house because he just got done with a drive in a convertible with these 2 guys. He's like, I think I'm going to have a smoke. I'm like, you're fucking right, you're going to have a smoke. Like, where do I do it? I was like, right out front, right in the street, right in front of my house. I want people walking by being like, hey, it's a big smoker over at that quiet guy's place. So I think the trip actually was a success based on the parameters that we had. And they were all doing work stuff. So I'll give myself one more defense part. If they had shown up earlier, I was planning on getting this like an early dinner reservation and then Nuggets, Thunder.
That makes sense. I just loved that we had the conclusion of the story. Titus actually was the one. He came in one day. He's like, dude, did you hear about this one Coors Light at Russillo's house?
Well, that's insane. Here's one, guys, and we'll all take a sip. But let's go fast so it doesn't get warm.
I'm happy. We got to get
Coors Light never gets warm, though.
We got to get the whole PMT and Russillo universe together sometime at Ryan's house. Maybe we just won't even have Ryan there. And just have a good time.
It might be more fun. Or maybe I'll just stay upstairs and watch a game. And then I'll text, how's it going down there?
He's on Synergy.
I'll do like a Van Pelt.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm happy that we got a conclusion and Kyle was able to come over finally. Because it did feel like a years-long story arc that was about this time last year that it started.
He was kind of bummed out about that for a while. That wasn't a joke.
But that's the part I missed. I misjudged that part.
But then I think, I don't know. He got golf clubs. Kyle's he's a valuable guy. He's all right.
Yeah.
He hit me up the other day to be like, these clubs are amazing. Like, I'm so happy. And I went, yeah, that's the whole point. Like, I wanted you to be happy about it. But look, it's very simple. If I lived near him and had the ability to just throw a couple down on a Tuesday afternoon, we'd hang out more.
Yeah.
I live like an hour and a half away. It doesn't.
You're not going to the frolic room.
I'm going to defend you. I mean, I live close to all my guys, and I don't hang out. Like, I mean, I have just shit going on. I got invited to the Halloween party this past weekend that one of the younger guys was throwing, and I just wrote back. I was like, dude, like, legitimately, thank you so much for inviting me. There's 0% chance I'm going, but I actually like really appreciate you just thinking of me because I don't get invited to anything anymore.
Now, right?
I don't get invited to shit.
I went out and grabbed drinks, and I forgot people were dressed up.
You are a known holiday forgetter.
I was like, fuck.
Valentine's
I think
Day,
I called Ceruti like on Christmas once.
You called me on Valentine's Day. I was out to dinner with my then
I think I've
girlfriend,
called you
now
Valentine.
wife. Yeah.
Well, how many times have I called you on Valentine's Day? Like 4 times?
The famous story is you called me once, and then you called me again, and my phone's on the table. By the way, phone up because I'm, what's up? And my wife's like, all right, Ryan's called twice. You can answer it. And it was Valentine's Day. You're like, oh, that's why it was so packed in West Hartford. I didn't know.
Totally. Right. But now this is what happens. We start telling these stories and then you start getting more emails being like, hey, man, I'm autistic as well.
No,
and like,
see,
it's not a big deal.
I'm going to defend Ryan to forever. And whenever anyone asks me, he is a very, very fun hang. And he just, like, you get older. You don't go out as much, But when Ryan, like,
thank
every
God.
time we hang out, I have the best time. So that the people who think like, oh, Ryan can't like hang out, it's like, dude, he's one of the best guys to hang out with.
I'm laying the groundwork now for our New Orleans escape for the Super Bowl.
That's going to be.
I'm trying to figure it out for us now because I was like, Ceruti the other day was like, you're probably not even going this year, are you? And I was like, actually, New Orleans, I will be going.
Yeah.
So
yeah, LSU, couple LSU alma maters, alums going back.
Well, get us hats. I almost bought a water bottle at the airport. All right.
Yeah.
Do you have anything coming up? What days do you guys doing the shows now? You doing it Fridays? Fridays and
Fridays every now and then. Big election. We did. This comes out on Wednesday afternoon. We did do. We elected a Pardon My Take president on Wednesday's show, and then in the title of the episode we wrote "We elect a president." Just to try to piss people off. So people are going to see that and just be like, what the fuck? They're talking politics.
I was so tempted, like, just to do one show tweet where I was going to say, is Harris a system president? And then just like, and never talk about it. Like, I wasn't going to do it. I don't have a topic, but just quarterbacks or NBA guys, like just to do it. But this was not a fun year for that kind of stuff.
No.
So maybe in 28 we can do tweets like that again.
And
I don't know.
If Trump wins, you and Bill will do a 1980s redraftables on Friday.
It was pre-recorded. There were no games. All right. Hey, this was everything I hoped it would be anymore.
Yes.
Thanks, man.
I loved it.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Life advice. lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. We got Kyle. We've got Steve. Is there any way we just get a video and audio peek into what Oregon is doing right now? Because when he opened up the Riverside this morning,
it's so fucking good.
I mean,
it's so good.
I couldn't. I kind of wish this were just kind of a screen grab. No, can we actually get the audio feed just for a second? I know it's not going to be great for the listeners, but dial it up. What's going on, Oregon?
What's going on, man? How's it going?
Where are you?
I'm at the beach, dude. Did a little getaway, a little escape for the end of the week here.
Okay.
You got construction in the background.
Yeah, man, they're like putting up the house. I got this thing going on. Bay behind me.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thanks, buddy. He's checking in with some shades.
No days off.
Like, the angle of the roof and where he was, apparently he's just trying to get away for a little bit. The guy could have just taken the day off.
Right.
Just so people are aware that.
Yeah, no days off.
No?
Well, we've been through this. Like he's more of a half day get a beverage in guy than he is take the full day off. So
he checked back in. I thought he was roofing. When the whole screen opened up this morning, I was like, is this guy tapping down some tar? What's going on? Yeah. So anyway, he'll edit this and it'll be good to go here shortly. My God. All right. Let's see here. We have a couple. We may just save it for Friday feedback because we had a few that kind of like waited. But you know what? In case somebody doesn't watch it on YouTube, we don't want to leave the audio audience out. So somebody's checking in here real quick on trivia. The trivia snipe caused some real concern. Approval rating down for me. It's been down now for a few weeks. Ryan's attempt to dunk on Ceruti for the dorky trivia night is the worst post wannabe jock syndrome I've ever heard in a minute. Oh, I've heard in a minute. So not ever heard. So not all timer. Just he's heard last minute or so. I bet if Ryan's core guys got one organized and Ryan was actually invited plus 250 underdog, he'd glom on like everything else in his life. Order some food next time, you ignorant jackass.
Wow.
Glom on.
I
don't know that I've ever been accused of that. Can I be be made fun of for never doing anything and then also be accused of glomming on? I don't know.
I mean, you didn't hear this, Kyle, because we taped this last night. But I will say the Big Cat, and this is airing right after the Big Cat interview, so I guess it flows nicely. It did dawn on me, and it hurt a little bit because he's probably right. Big Cat, PFT come over, Titus, whoever, group of dudes. There's probably some sort of spread at Ryan's house. There's probably something. We probably get more than one Coors Light.
This isn't even about trivia anymore.
No, I'm still processing the whole thing. And that definitely hurt a little bit. I'm going to be honest, because it was definitely true.
I'm telling you right now, if it's the beginning of the season, it was Nuggets Thunder.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people, maybe I'll just do that in the next pod. Be like, didn't watch last night, went to a movie, don't have an open. Coming up next, we've got Shil Kapadia. I might just do it. Be easier on me.
Yeah.
Wow. So this isn't even really about trivia anymore.
Man, no, it just made me think.
Can I share a fun fact then? This was years ago. Those like life episodes you guys do when they come out to LA or whatever. This was, this must have been 4 years ago. I don't exactly know when, but Tate and I went over because Mark Titus was going over there, and we just basically sat outside while you guys did what seemed like a 3-hour podcast. I think we left before it was over. There was like 4 beers outside. It was cold. That was like my first experience with those guys. So yeah, I definitely felt like an outsider there too. I'll just say that. I mean, I wasn't. What was I supposed to do? Get me a mic or whatever? It was just funny that we went over there because Titus was like, "Come with us, let's go." And then we like sat out on this cold patio. And I think I went in one time because we were out of beers, but that was like it. I think we just kind of left, and I don't know how it turned out, but that was just an experience I wanted to share.
Well, I'll try to warm up the patio for you next time.
Thank you.
Progress.
Yeah, do you want to add anything to this after kind of derailing the trivia part of it?
Well, no, I didn't derail the trivia part. It just because he was saying that like if your buddies asked about trivia, like you'd be excited to do trivia. I think there might be some truth to that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
trivia is a group you don't want to piss off. They're just like, I don't know if you'd say they're rabid fan bases, but
apparently,
they're into it.
Yeah,
they're into it. It's just one of those groups like I don't know. Maybe
like
it's
if
like
Ed Quinn
Raptors
was
fans.
like, "Hey, let's do trivia," you're telling me you wouldn't do trivia?
Probably not.
Damn.
I understand liking trivia. Okay. But I also think like I'd have way too much pressure on me because it'd be like, don't you read all these books? I'd be like, yeah, do you think I retain all of it? Multiple choice, Napoleon, Exiled. I'd be like, I think I have it. I think I put it what I have it just without any multiple choice.
Yeah, with trivia, I don't know if it's more important to get all of them or to get the one that no one else knows. That I feel like that's the better feeling when like, you've
never been invited.
Okay.
I know I get a lot of texts from people at it that are cheating. So like, hey, I'm at trivia right now. Like, who was Mike Boddicker traded for?
Who was the 5th president of the United States?
Let's see here. All right, so that was a little feedback there. I like this email a lot. Let's do it. All right, allow me to begin by saying how much I appreciate Russillo as the least grating Boston sports personality. Please continue to call Bill out on his shit. Smiley face. Okay. My name is Harry. I'm 18 years old from Toronto, Canada. So he just wants us to all know who he is. I just graduated high school, currently in the early days of a gap year. Kyle, you take a gap year? Were your parents on board with the gap year?
No, there was no chance. That train had to stay on the tracks. And then it came off anyway, but it didn't start.
Yeah, right.
I guess technically
I
had
made a gap year happen.
I guess, yeah.
More of a halftime. Same thing.
More of a
right.
halftime.
Like, you want me to go to abroad? All right. Well, I'll stay at home and do nothing. All right. As I write this,
Modell's nothing. Sporting goods department managed it. Come on.
No, I was talking about myself there. I'm not talking about
sorry.
your. Modell still regrets their decision with you.
Yeah.
Well, look at him now.
As I write this, I'm busy discovering myself in Cape Town. This guy, yeah, it's unbelievable. Born, you think? But all that really means is legal alcohol consumption, a steady diet of high sodium instant noodles. Hopefully by the time next year, I'll have one of those healthy habits under control and maybe even a selected major program. I know, wishful thinking. All right. Well, thanks for letting us know more about you. Now for the meat and potatoes. Over the last few days, I've been tossing and turning, not over my current stationary life, but over freaking Vince Carter of all people. Recently, the Toronto Raptors, whom I cherish dearly, decided to retire Carter's number 15, making him the first player in franchise history to get his jersey retired. Carter's legacy in Toronto is complicated. My father and many older Raps fans are disappointed, to say the least. My dad vividly remembers Carter quitting on the team. He frequently references Bill Simmons' shared disgust with Carter's antics. Carter played like crap, yapped the media, tanked his trade value, dragged his mom into the drama, and set the team back years. But younger fans like myself have no memory of this. Interestingly, a generational divide has pitted the old and young Raptors fans against one another. Carter has actively rehabilitated his image as a media personality, and through his documentary, The Carte Effect. Wait, did he misspell that? I don't know. I didn't see it.
Unless that's Canadian, like French Canadian. Probably not, though.
Yeah, but that wouldn't really apply there, I wouldn't think. So, although more French in British Columbia than I expected. Anyway, I just don't like watching the player-produced documentaries. To me, I watch almost zero of them. They did the documentary to court the younger fans with the nostalgia for vintage basketball. Young people hear Vince Carter and picture his vicious dunk package and Twitter highlights, oblivious to the ugly divorce that made Carter persona non grata in the six. What bugs me, good writer, this guy. Keep grinding, buddy. What bugs me is that Carter's jersey retirement is being marketed as the highlight of the Raptors season. Throwback jerseys, new murals downtown, a never-ending social media tribute, and even a freaking Air Canada jet with Carter's silhouette and number 15 slapped on the side. Carter is being treated like the savior of Canadian basketball and a hero of the organization. Watching his retirement ceremony made me cringe with Canadian shame. We're so desperate for attention that we'll honor the guy who wanted nothing to do with us. I can't wait for the follow-ups to this email. I get that I'm being far too emotional about the retirement of another man's jersey. I'm hung up on events I didn't even live through, but transparency matters. There are two sides in every story. But what Vince did was shameful, and it's embarrassing that the whole city and organization is hell-bent on acting like it didn't happen, or worse, that we're the ones that need to grow up and forgive Vince. Vince has yet to apologize for what he did. Until he does, I don't think his jersey has any right to hang in the rafters. It's a shame that Carter is the one who received the glitz and glory of the first Raptor jersey retired. The honor should be reserved for players who actually like playing here, or at the very least played like they gave a shit. Am I irrational, or my concerns valid? This is, 18, the educational system has done you well, my friend. Yep. I agree with everything you said. I've never agreed with an 18-year-old more on anything. I don't think. I hope not. But yeah, I think that season, everybody knew it was going to be really bad. I don't know what the timeline of the events for this to be in the mix. We could all talk about like forgive and forget, but it was like really, really ugly. And we could make it a Toronto thing, but it's not a Toronto thing. You can make some sort of Canadian where like, oh, everybody's just nicer and all this different stuff. That hasn't been my experience. But I would say that when teams are down, there's like a classic, let's retire a jersey move.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Oh, so Ceruti is well aware of this. So go ahead.
Well, I'm two things. One, I am in a similar situation with Dwight Howard. I cannot forgive him. I don't like him, to be honest with you. Like, Kevin Clark and I have talked about this because I think Kev like kind of looks more fondly back at those times. Not that I don't look fondly on them, I guess, but it's just complicated because I really don't like how it ended with Dwight. He was a huge asshole. He screwed himself and the team. It was just this disastrous situation. And then we had to lose Stan Van Gundy, who I liked as a coach at the time because of all of that. It was a 12-year reset. There's a lot of weirdness and pain that kind of goes into that. So be like, oh yeah, just retire his jersey. Remember how awesome it was with Dwight? I'm like, wait, I'm just supposed to forget of how much of a dick he was at the end and how much he just trashed the franchise and left us for dead for over a decade. So I'm kind of with you. I don't know that I will forgive Dwight. I certainly haven't yet. Magic fans may disagree with me, but I'm kind of with our guy on this one. The issue though that you have here is, and I can say this because the Magic are not like a prestigious franchise, but like when you get to those like mid to lower tier, at least franchises without a lot of history, the bar is just so much lower for those teams to want to retire people. It looks good. They want to put up somebody's name. You're right, Ryan. If they're having a bad season, put the number up there. You get people in the stands. Sell some extra jerseys. That does work. So unfortunately, that's like kind of part of the business. I feel like when you're like anywhere from like 15 to 30 franchise wise, prestige wise. But I definitely agree with you because I don't know that I'll ever forgive Dwight Howard.
Kyle?
Yeah, I don't have much to add, but I think it's cool for that side of the argument that they got a young guy who maybe is only used to, trying to get Vince Carter on my 2K my team or like you said, the package highlights. I think it's cool for that side that they got a dude like you that's articulate and can really wow some people your own age. So maybe you can gain some ground there.
Yeah, maybe there's a lesson of like, it's better to just recognize the greatness and forgive and move on. It was really nasty. All right. I mean, you know me as an all first team grudge holder. Like if I were involved with a team and I had been around there for that, I'd be like, I'm not in favor of that. But I think to have a special night and to feel like you have this, and it was nasty, dude. I mean, it was nasty when he left, but also the positive side of it. Like when he burst onto the scene, it was the most fun thing to watch in basketball for years. It was so much fun. Like the beginning of the Curry part reminds me of that a little bit, and just pushing the boundaries of like what somebody could do in games. I mean, that was it. The dunk contest, we were like excited about it, and he delivered. Like, when's the last time you went into a dunk contest being like, I can't wait for this? I remember where I was bartending or I was at that place that I worked and it was on. And like, can you imagine an entire bar of adults being excited and wanting the dunk contest audio up? Right? That's what he did. So, yeah, I can see it's been years. Let's appreciate this instead of being negative about it. Like, I understand all of those parts of it, but I could also like go, yeah, the guy that didn't want to play here didn't want to be in Canada. And we got the worst package back for this guy. And he was more excited to be, now granted, maybe it's a New York thing with him, but like that was Newark still. Okay. Like, he would rather be in Newark than Toronto.
That's
like,
insane.
That's
insane. Yeah. Well, so can I just throw this nugget in there? I believe Kyle Lowry has a statue. Is that true? I think he has a statue. And also, like Kawhi, would you rather retire Kawhi's number or Vince Carter's number if you're a Raptors fan? Because at least Kawhi was like, he gets in there half a season, wins you a title, but he's honest about it. He's like, I don't want to be here. I'm going to leave. I actually respect the hell out of that. So
there is a Kyle Lowry statue?
I think there is. I remember seeing
downtown.
That.
Oh, it's downtown.
Oh, wait, I'm glued. Yeah, Kyle Lowry statue spotted down. So what did they just move it around a bunch? And I don't know.
It's like a Where's Waldo
statue. That's kind of sick.
Like I have more Raptors thoughts, obviously, but like this DeRozan, we would have won had we not traded me there. Like I like DeRozan a lot. That's not true.
Nope.
Do you think anybody was ever remotely fucking scared of you guys? When both he and Lowry in the playoffs have all those stretches with the Raptors, you're like, this again? Like, this isn't even close. And don't talk to me about the 6-game series with the Cavs. It wasn't a real thing. So there's some odd historical stuff. But then when you make it out to be like it's only Toronto that does that, that's not fair either. Because we could just run through the examples of like, why would they say this about this team years later? Because that's not true either. But then, I don't know, the whole DeRozan Drake thing got turned up again the last couple of days. Like Drake just stands up and stares at an NBA athlete. Is that what that was? I don't know. You know what? I'm sick of talking about the Raptors.
I mean, the Thunder retired Nick Collison's jersey. I love Nick Collison, but like there are levels to this. Franchises.
That one's worse than Vince Carter.
I love Nick Collison. That's insane.
Yeah. Is there some other part of that? Did you like rescue a small sawmill from burning that we don't? I'm just open to the idea there may have been something else. I don't know.
Maybe. I hope so. Seems like a great guy, but I don't know.
All right. I feel like Kyle felt left out on that one. So let's go back into a Kyle zone.
We do 3 of these a week. That's fine.
All right. Big fan of the pod, 34 and married, toddler son, 6'3", 185, pickup comp, 47-year-old Manu Ginobili with less bounce. Manu had crazy bounce. Need some advice here. On Saturday night, my wife went out for a girls' night with a few of her friends. She hasn't gone out much since our 18-month-year-old son was born, so I stayed home and was happy to give her a break. Around
18-month-year-old.
18-month-year-old. Yeah.
Whoa.
Good pickup. He's super immature. Around 8:30 that night, one of my friends, Tom, name change, showed up at the house. He's not a close friend, but we know each other. His wife is good friends with mine, and she is one of the girls my wife was out with. I thought it was weird for him to show up, but he said he was bored and decided to pop by to see how things were going since our wives were out that night. We had a quick beer, watched some Rockets Warriors, then he left. Sounds like a night at my place. Around midnight, I get another... Light? It's never going to end. I'm going to have to throw like an all-time bender with like a fog machine and hostess and waitresses and I don't know. See who I invite.
Or some chips,
Yeah, or some chips.
I'm just kidding.
Titus was suggesting, as we covered in this, but Kyle didn't hear the interview because he's not going to go back and listen. I don't blame him. Titus suggested I gave you one beer to share.
Yeah, that's
all right. Well,
that's not
Titus.
There's no way.
That's the content machine that is Mark Titus.
Yeah.
Does he believe it, or was he trying to add to that?
No,
okay.
No way.
Hey, Wargon, you've been sipping on that one a little long. Pass it around. Man, you know who's a terrible guy in a Coors Light rotation? Wargon. All right. So after around midnight, I get another knock on the door. It's Tom again. He said he left his phone and needed to grab it. Sure enough, his phone was wedged into the couch cushion. When he showed up a second time, Tom was pretty drunk. But since he didn't drive and lives 2 blocks away, I didn't think much of it and let him walk home. The next morning, my wife and I are discussing our evenings. She says, I hear Tom was over late last night. And all I said back was, yeah, we had a beer and watched the Warriors game. Turns out Tom's wife had been checking Find My Phone and saw Tom was at my place until close to midnight. Now I'm thinking Tom dropped by so he can intentionally leave his phone here and use me as an alibi.
Whoa.
As my wife is recounting her evening, she tells me that Tom's wife has some trust issues because she's caught him with dating apps on his phone. That's why she was checking his location constantly. Oh, so she was checking his location all that night. I never lied to my wife, but clearly I omitted some important info. Should I tell her? I'm not that close with Tom. If he was a core crew guy, I'd probably talk to him first. But in this case, I feel my loyalty is more to my wife and her friend. Should I wait and see what happens? I'm supposed to go to a dinner party on Friday where Tom and his wife will be there. I'm having a lot of anxiety about what's going to happen. I'm worried I'm going to be put in a spot where I either have to lie and corroborate the alibi or out Tom in public.
Dude.
What does the gang think I should do? Wow.
Tom is clearly in the middle of running some sort of scheme here, and
Totally.
he's going to get caught one way or another. That's the way I look at it. If you don't want that on your conscience, I can't say for sure. I would just be like, you know what? There was some fishy going on. I don't know if you want to call it bro code or whatever it is. It's just mind your own business sort of deal. But I think Tom has already been caught, and he clearly thinks this is some bulletproof plan when like
it's not a bad plan.
Apart. It's not. No, it's actually on paper, it's a little bit genius. But teams don't run Statue of Liberty all the time because a lot of stuff can go wrong. So I think that I think you could stay out of this. Tom's going to get what he deserves, and it just doesn't sound like he's Ocean's 11 over here. This isn't going to have a happy ending. So I don't know. I would probably just go to sleep at night knowing I'm minding my own business.
Now, see, you don't know Tom's shit, and he used you. So, and if your wife asks you, "Hey, was Tom over for 5 hours last night?" and you just say the truth, that is, no, he came by, he lost. His phone
there
and
you
came back.
go.
You're not telling on the guy. I don't know. You don't owe Tom shit. I'm not lying for Tom. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not
I
admitting
wasn't
anything
suggesting
for Tom.
lying for him. Yeah.
No, I know what you're saying, but like, honestly, fuck that guy. That you got used here. I would not. You don't owe him anything.
I'd say beyond not owing Tom shit, I think the most important thing is you don't know anything. You don't know shit. You don't know. So you don't have to do anything. You shouldn't have anxiety about it. You should say exactly what happened and leave it up to the tribunal.
Well, it's probably the dinner that he's most worried about because she might just be like, "So, what'd you guys do the other night?" You know what I mean? Not your wife, but like when you go to dinner with this couple, Tom's wife might use that as an opportunity to just you might not want to be grilled, while you guys are at Applebee's or whatever. Like I get not wanting to do that, but
but the loyalty to the wife part is 100% here, and it's not even about bro code. And by the way, if you're in the friend core group here, which is not the case here, like, you shouldn't be putting your buddies in that kind of situation.
Right.
Mhm.
Like, I remember there was, let's say, a situation where a friend of mine, I had a nice place, and he was like, "Hey, is there any way I could, like, if when you're out of town, like, stay at your place?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't give a shit. Like, go ahead." And I thought he meant because it was nice and, like, wanted to bring his wife. He left out the part where that was not the case.
man.
So then when I realized, I was like, "Oh, wait." And then he was kind of like, "Well, is that a problem?" I was like, "I'm not really, like, involved in your stuff, but
Doesn't
I'm
feel
dating
good.
somebody." Right, like, I'm dating somebody, and if I have to explain that I'm willing to let you do this, then that opens up endless fucking windows and doors of what I'm potentially capable of.
This isn't the last time we'll
So
be talking about this. I can guarantee that.
yeah, so I just was like, you're putting me in a tough spot, even if I don't have anything to do with what's going on. Because it wasn't like even close to being a core guy. It was just a moment of, yeah, I don't really know how to, like, I guess I could just let you, but I also, I don't know, like, there's nothing in this. Like, it only opens up potential issues for me. There's no point if this, like, whatever you're mapping out, like, how do I benefit from this? But, like, never. Like, there's nothing that's ever going to benefit you. And the real problem with it is I don't want to have to explain me signing off on something like this. Right. So what you need to do is let it all play out in front of you. These are not the same things, by the way, but you need to let it all play out in front of you. And if it comes up at the dinner where it's like, yeah, we watched the game for a while and you're getting death stares from Tom, like, I don't know that you have to be like, well, yeah, but Tom left and he left his phone. I think I would just go into it being ready to be, like, entertained, endless possibilities. And if it comes back on you, like, you just got to tell the truth, man. Will Smith.
The guy's got dating apps on his phone. Like, he's done this before. This is not going to be a you thing. Like, this may be the final thing that breaks the relationship, but, like, clearly there's some shit that's going on that's bigger than you are. So
The wife that night is double checking his location multiple times. I mean, look, that's blatantly what he did. You don't know him that well. He lives down the street. He had one beer.
Came back a little hammered, right?
You don't, yeah.
The Rockets are a blast. So they're one of my favorite league pass teams. So I don't blame him for wanting to watch some Rockets basketball. But yeah, I get why you're stressed out in case that moment comes up where he looks at you. He's like, yeah, I was over his place. You were drinking all night, watching hoops. And then he looks at you. And as a guy, you're supposed to be like, yeah, it was awesome. Like,
This is kind of like old school.
I don't know.
Remember, speaking of your
Go
guy,
ahead.
Craig Kilborn. Remember Craig Kilborn's character in Old School when he's there in the bathroom and he's making out
Don't
with
tell.
the
That's
chick?
what chicks
Yeah.
do.
That's just like this is what you're getting yourself into here.
The delivery of that line from Kilborn is
So
one of my
good.
favorite moments in cinematic history. You gonna tell? I'm gonna tell. That's what chicks do. I was so
Listerine.
happy.
Yep.
I was so happy for Craig. What would you do, Kyle? What would you do if you're the host here, the dinner is going off, and then the guy who's not a core guy.
If my wife's good friend's guy came over, I think I would initially be mad once I put it together. Like, damn, you fucking used me. I was weird that you were here to begin with. I was trying to be nice. Then I find out you used me. I would be pissed. I think I would mind my own business. But if it comes up when I'm explicitly asked about the timeline, then I'd offer up some, I'd offer up my, what I saw. But other than that, I'm a firm believer in minding your own business. If it's not something terribly gross, I mean, you have a little bit of the benefit of the doubt where I think I'd sleep okay, just being like, yeah, Tom's going to get his, but I'm not the fucking sheriff around these parts, so I don't know.
Not even deputized.
Right.
I just really like the sheriff line. I think we got it. I think we got it.
It was a good one.
Good luck. love a follow up on that one. After that
Absolutely.
dinner, after that dinner, we'll cue you right to
Go
the
ahead
top.
and star that one.
Yeah,
Put that one in a new folder.
I may just email him next weekend and be like, how are things?
Circling back.
See Tari Easton the other night? Anything new with you? Okay. Shout out to Morgan for just I don't know if we can get a picture of that up there. Let's try to get his follower count up. I think he's at 700 now. Ceruti, Kyle, as always. We have a Friday feedback mailbag. I don't know about this one, folks. I'm not sure. We taped it. It's out there on our YouTube page, so please subscribe. We'll be back on Friday. Ryen Russillo Podcast, Ring Respond Podcast.